Hey guys, this video is called Hermetic Initiation. What it is, how to do it, and quite importantly, if you're even considering it, do you actually need it? So, we're going to start off with a little bit of general discussion about initiation, because I know there are viewers who haven't looked into the stuff much, and as always, we're going to try and take it as far as we can. So, when we say initiation, what does this mean? Basic meaning of the word is a beginning, to initiate an action or initiate an endeavor. So when we're talking about Hermetic initiation, what we have to ask is, what is this Hermetic endeavor that we are seeking to initiate? Now, a lot of discussion of initiation seems to revolve around these rituals and these lines of succession and the idea that you need an initiation properly performed upon you or that you've gone through in order to have a real initiation. And in a certain context, there is some truth to that, but I really want to break down the theories behind it to figure out what the reality is in all of these competing agendas and ideas. Now, when it comes to these sort of group initiations, two of the most commonly talked about issues are lines of succession and these little things that we call egregors. Alright, so an egregor is like a group mind, or a group energy reservoir. People, through performing similar rites or the same rites or identical rites, through taking oaths that bind them to one another, and through their intentional willpower, create communal energy reservoirs. And in order to tap into one of those community reservoirs, the rites of initiation, the oaths, and the passing of power from someone who's already a member, who's already integrated into that egregor, to pass the power is kind of like giving them the password. Alright? So, if you feel the need for an egregor to support you in your work, that can be something to take into consideration. Now, when you're looking at whose egregor do you want to be part of, some are going to really advertise an ancient lineage. Sometimes, well, oftentimes this is completely bogus. Some groups do have something substantial to offer as far as their history. But the key is to look at who are these people today. Are these true magicians? Are these masters of their art? And let that tell you something about the value of their egregor. Now, when it comes to line of succession, a lot of this is tied into the egregor concept and based on it, but there's another element to it as well. It's been discussed as a matter of almost like a brand name, where when you hear a certain word or a certain title of a group, you assume certain things about them. Like if you hear Gardnerian Wicca, or if you get an opportunity to join a coven of Gardnerian Wiccans, well, it seems like you should be getting the same style of witchcraft that is Gardnerian Wicca, that they were practicing back in the 50s and 60s. So that's an area where a valid line of initiation tells you that what these people are calling themselves is actually what they are. So there is that element to it as far as just honesty and integrity. So people who are claiming prestigious lineages, the burden is on them to justify that claim. Alright? A lot of people will claim famous things for whatever reason. Take it with a grain of salt. And when you do find someone with genuine initiatic succession, don't assume that just because they have that their line of succession and the egregor that goes with it is something you necessarily want to be involved in. Because just as you gain from that egregor, so too must you give to it. Alright? There's an exchange. It's like a bank account. You're putting your money in to be able to get their money out on loan, but it all goes back. You know? The egregor serves as a way of circulating a lot of energy through you. It doesn't necessarily leave you with a whole lot more. Alright? And there can be binds and burdens and almost forms of taxation upon you in return for that connection. So beware. Doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. It just means that you need to know what you're talking about. You need to know what's being offered before you come to any kind of decision on it. Now, all of that aside, what else can initiation be? Because especially when you are looking at groups that claim prestigious line of initiatic succession, or not, you have to look either way. Could this be what we call a cult? And a group of people who follow a more or less arbitrary set of belief systems that are really primarily about whatever the leader wants them to believe, and that leader has the privilege of changing the beliefs, where the individual is very much discouraged from deviating from the prescribed beliefs. And in this context, initiation can serve as kind of a leash on you. It can serve as a way of introducing you to groupthink. And I don't mean groupthink here in a positive way. I'm talking about it as a psychological term. Groupthink is what happens when the need for conformity and acceptance within a group of people leads you to bypass your own better judgment. Alright, so that's another thing to be aware of. What else can it be? Because not every form of initiation starts with an initiatic line of succession. Even if it does, even if there is this egregor that you're being brought into contact with, you still have to go back to what is it are you initiating? What is the endeavor? What is it that you are beginning? And why is this relevant to it? So we're talking about Hermetic initiation. An alchemical way of saying what the goal is might be to separate the gold from the dross, or separate the fire from the dead earth, separate the spirit from that which binds it, and then reintegrate the two for a more perfected being, is one way of looking at it. It's very metaphorical, very abstract in that sense. Some orders refer to knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. Others refer to Christ consciousness, or conscious immortality is another popular phrase for what this Hermetic endeavor really is. And the interesting thing to me is that when you look at what the endeavor really is, that endeavor doesn't necessarily require external facilitation. It's like physical health. It's something, you're working with material that's all inherent to you, you know? Soul, magic, consciousness, these things are inherent to you, whether you're aware of them or not. So the Hermetic endeavor, then, is not about gaining something you don't already have. It's about exploring something that already exists inside you. Alright? So any kind of external force that you invite to be applied to yourself should serve that end, not of causing your energy and mind to conform, but rather to blossom. All right? Now, as we're discussing this term egregor, the idea of this collective power that's outside of yourself that will support you is very, very attractive to many people, and I would like to discuss something that has been called a few different names throughout history. One popular term is the Great White Brotherhood, or the Brotherhood of the Light, or the Fellowship of the Light, or sometimes it's called the True Rosicrucian Fraternity, or the True Illuminati. And any group of people, or any individual that claims to have the definitive control over who is or is not a member of this, who claims their initiatory rights to be the sole doorway to it, is either talking about something much, much smaller, or they're full of shit. Okay? Now, there are a lot of small groups that have their own individual egregor, but this Fellowship of the Light is something that is not bound within any specific tradition or religion or language or nation. It's not even bound between the living and the dead. Alright? In this sense, Hermetic initiation, or joining the Fellowship of the Light, is once again not the imposition of something new upon you. It is not the granting of something that you did not have before, but rather the awakening and the return of awareness of that which already exists, of that which you already are. Now, that's not to say that in this life you can't learn more, that you can't take it further than you have before. It's not to say that there is no genuine endeavor in which you engage now in this life. It's to say that the greatest egregor and the greatest help is one which is vast and over which no individual body of people has exclusive claim to. In fact, any true initiation is an introduction to the Fellowship of the Light, is a reawakening and a reclaiming of that which is already yours. Even ones that initiate within a specific egregor, or that utilize a stream of power that comes from teacher to the teacher before, to the one before, to the one before, that may have changed its technique or manifestations, but a current through time of initiatory energy and transformative occurrences that establish a pattern and a regularity and increase the probability of the awakening happening in this moment. Any of those methods, if they're genuine, are not simply to initiate you into some group of people. It's to initiate you into something eternal, something which has been since before we knew how to write about it, and something which will continue to be no matter what current groups may ever be defunct or fall apart or never teach again, because it's something that lives inside each and every one of us. Now, in the context of something timeless and eternal that already exists within you, why would you need initiation or training or any external force whatsoever? The answer to that is surprisingly simple. Our perceptive abilities, our entire frame of reference, our entire ability to perceive what's around us is heavily restricted and governed by our thoughts. Now, our conscious thoughts don't tend to have a whole lot of power behind them, in large part because throughout our upbringing, this vast energy of consciousness gets brought into the flesh and made to conform to a certain set of modes of thinking that function within the communal consciousness that we're sharing in this material manifest reality. And some of those beliefs are so deeply set within the brain and within the mind that they seem to be unquestionable facts. And based on the way we learn, the social nature of how we maintain a certain set of beliefs that structure our consciousness, it can be quite difficult to restructure it on your own. So, and then getting together with other people who are more or less in the same shoes as you are, you end up reinforcing where you're already at rather than reinforcing what you want to become. Changing beliefs, not just by deciding to believe something, but by putting that belief into action again and again and again to build up a frame of reference and a set of living experiences to support the belief. And doing this in the context of a society where you can look up to people and emulate them, thereby engaging your social energies in as well in crafting this new and improved self. This is what the social and training aspect of it is all about. This is why you need training at all, is to restructure the mind. And when I say mind, I'm not just talking about your rational thoughts and beliefs. I'm talking about your emotional reactions. I'm talking about your emotional habits, your thought habits, your behavioral habits. All of these things heavily reinforce a very restricted form of conscious interaction with the universe around you. All right? Simple beliefs like the physical room around me is the only thing that exists right now, and anything else is further away. That's a belief, and it is not a true belief. It is factually false. much more going on around you than the material that you see. And yet, just understanding that factually is not enough to change your perceptions, because all of your behaviors reinforce the false belief. All of your actions reinforce the false perception. Ritual action, trying to command energy, regardless of whether or not you actually are seeing and feeling it, is a way of beginning to retrain your mind to act as if energy is real. Likewise, speaking to spirits, speaking to God, speaking to angels, is engaging your actual physical movements and your physical activity and your physical reality in a behavior that is only relevant if your assumption that there's something intelligent listening to you is true. If you're just reciting stuff to yourself and you think it's all happening in the little bubble void of your own mind, you're wasting your time. Bringing additional people into that, practicing magic together with multiple people, is a way to further engage the social energies of multiple human beings working in harmony, creating their own group thought form that accommodates the reality of spiritual beings. Now, a question I've been asked many times is, what if through this thought restructuring, all I'm doing is giving myself hallucinations? And this is actually a very valid concern. It's a highly valid concern. And this is why you see a lot of people that get into occultism and ended up being kind of driven mad by it, to the point where they could be diagnosably mentally ill after a while. And that has to do with incorporating two things. One, incredibly negative belief systems. The whole Hermetic law of like attracts like. When you focus on the nasty, shitty, corrupted parts of the universe, that's what you draw to yourself. So there's that element to it. The other element to it is that there can be this unconscious fear that everything you're doing is fake, and this can lead people to generate false phenomena. Instead of talking to the spirits and then waiting to see if they notice something, they talk to the spirit and then try to imagine that they see it, and try to imagine what it would say until their imagination becomes this self-fulfilling fantasy that has nothing to do with reality. And it's very difficult when looking at various types of occult or metaphysical belief systems to say which ones are true and which ones aren't. A lot of them want me to dive in and just believe it 100%, and they say it'll be real if I just believe it. And it's like, well, what if I just get myself to hallucinate some bullshit? So there's a balance that needs to occur through this process of training, through this hermetic endeavor that allows you to view potential beliefs as something that you're choosing to operate on the assumption that it's true, and then you're waiting for a response. Because if it's real, there will be some level of response somewhere along the way that is external to you, that is not coming from your own self. And it can take patience. It can take a lot of self-development before the perceptions begin to open up. But when they do, it's so different from anything that you can generate through your own will. The existence of an external being with its own consciousness, its own thoughts, personality even, intentions, feelings, external to yourself. So there's that side of it. And many initiatory traditions can be very harsh in their judgment of individual practitioners and harsh in their judgment of newly founded groups, because they say, you guys don't know what you're doing. You don't know which axioms are true and will yield results versus the ones that are just going to lead you into delusion. So we've been doing this for a long time. Just believe us. And they like to imagine that a bona fide brand name should be enough to tell you that their set of operating principles is the one that's going to work. It's a very old world mentality. It's a very Piscean age mentality. And to a certain extent, there is a use in it. There is a use in authority telling you something is true, but it has to be stuff that you can put to the test. And our minds respond differently to the same stimuli, oftentimes. So there has to be an inherent flexibility. There has to be an ability to make it your own. You know, it's not just about looking at a school and saying, oh, who's the master of that school, or the head teacher, or the high priestess, or the imperator, or whatever. How great are they? You have to ask, how many true awakened initiates are coming out of their school? How much does it look like people are aping the leader? Very lower chakra behavior. And how much does it look like they're using base emulation to awaken their own flame and let that transmute them into something their teacher might never have had in mind for them, but that is more real for it? So as far as initiations granted or performed by somebody else upon you, they tend to fulfill a number of different purposes. There's dedication. This is the part that you bring to the initiation. This is your energy that you put into it. Whether it's through signing an oath or taking an oath of dedication to an endeavor or a concept. Some cases it will involve a dedication to a group or a lineage or a code of conduct that is uniquely human, that keys you into a distinct group of people. But one way or another, your intention to do it is in itself an initiatory act. My first dedication was a self-dedication when I was a teenager, and yet in many ways it was among the most important initiatory experiences of my life, because that was when I asserted from within myself that this magic was something that I intended to master. And so the self element, the dedication element, is an important part of any genuine initiation. There's also conferral of power. This can be the welcoming into the egregor. In certain lodge settings, they'll use complex sets of symbols that end up burned into your aura. You know, you see the mark of an initiate of a certain tradition. And that's the key that they use to tap into the reservoir of tools at their disposal. In others, you'll see a passing of power, a creation of a circuit, and a priest or priestess willing their power into the initiate. And that made it actually into a really campy but amusing movie about some teen warlocks who could will their power to somebody when they died only. So yes, you're not actually willing your entire soul to them in that context. You're simply willing the power of the egregor and the power of the succession of initiations into that person. And their will to accept it is what causes the link to happen. It's not just the will of the initiator to bestow it, and neither is it only the will of the initiate to receive it. It has to happen from both sides for that dynamic connection to occur. But there are other types of conferrals of power that are not, again, dependent upon this little egregor. And in that case, it's not even a bestowing of power, but rather a facilitation of shedding of the veils. Serving as an initiator, not from the perspective of being the guardian of a lineage, but simply from the perspective of facilitating somebody's transition. Serving as the mirror that their higher self can show an image on to instruct the smaller self in becoming receptive to that power. It's a loop that doesn't root itself solely in the will of the initiator, or even primarily in the will of the initiator, but rather in the higher will of the initiate, is from where that power comes. So, yes, what have we covered? We've covered dedication. We've covered passing of power. We've covered awakening of power, which is more important than passing of power. And typically it would go in this order if you're looking at structured initiatory traditions. It starts with your dedication. Then it comes with a introduction to the egregor. Then there's a passing of power within that egregor. And then you finally get to the point of awakening your own inner power. The egregor serves as something of a crutch. The stream of initiatic succession carries you forward with power beyond your own individual willpower. All right? And then the final thing after this transformation, at some point in time, there's going to be a recognition initiation. Okay? It's almost like a diploma. It's not a transformation in and of itself, but simply the conferral of recognition by your community that, yes, indeed, we do believe that you have awakened. All right? Now, even awakened people can choose to participate in egregors. They can choose to enter into streams of initiatic succession so that they can gain that power to throw at their own students, or to join a group or a lodge so that they can expand their tool set by adopting the tools of that group or coven or tradition. They can come together with others of their fellows and forge a new egregor to do something different from what they've seen the others around them doing, to approach the training and initiating of people who are new to this in a different way. But the key, really, is about where the power comes from. And if the power is coming from an ego mass which demands conformity, that's a cult. If the power is coming from that immortal source out of which our very being radiates, then the initiation is true. Now, a lot of people can run into a challenge that is rooted in a confusion between facilitating an awakening versus recognizing something which has already been accomplished. This whole idea that it's something that already exists inside you is very true. However, an initiation that awakens that isn't merely a matter of saying it until you intellectually comprehend it and, oh man, now that I know that it's in me, I've got it, I'm there. Probably not yet. It's important to remember with this talk of transformation that it's still an initiation. It is a beginning. As so many Buddhist masters have said throughout the ages, the end is the beginning. This pinnacle of the Hermetic endeavor is just the beginning of who you will be after it has been attained. A lot of people have a hard time wrapping their minds around this. They imagine that they're just going to melt into light and it's going to be that forever. And there may be many experiences melting into light. And some of them may take you so far outside of time that even a word like forever was meaningless in it. And yet, as long as this flesh lives, in this world, you live. And so this awakened consciousness, this ability to connect with your own higher self and the higher selves of other people and other beings which are not in the flesh, your true soul family, enlightened masters or ascended masters or secret chiefs or whatever, angels and gods, deep and exalted awareness. This simply informs you more as to who and what you really are, so that whatever dream you choose to dream is one that you dream consciously and intentionally, not as a matter of accident or circumstance. And in my humble opinion, this world needs more true initiates. This world needs as many awakened people as there are to awaken, because many dark dreams have been dreamt for many a year. And in order for our people to collectively wake from the nightmares that we've been creating into a lucid dream of beauty and harmony. It's going to require a lot of us who are willing to look at the structures of our own psyches and restructure them, transform to allow more possibility within our own immediate sphere, within the spheres of every being with whom we ever contact. For me, that's what begins at the moment of true initiation, is the work of letting my own change the rest of the world as well. In that, my friends, I invite you all to join me. Whether you choose to self-initiate and do it the hard way, or whether you choose to enlist the aid of other initiates, that choice is yours and yours alone to make. Let it be made in love. Let it be made with passion and intention and fire. But let it be done.